Chaos and Chaos for your Tuesday Bachelor recap. I'm Lindsay.
I'm Nash.
And we're going to jump right into it. So, we missed last week. I was feeling a little under the weather. So we're going to do a quick overview of what happened last week. Honestly, not a whole lot in my opinion.
Yeah.
That was their date in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the highlight for you? Like, what was the one thing that stood out the most?
Well, it was obviously, I think, all the Carolina drama, which ultimately led to her getting no rose and saying goodbye.
Yep. And I was, after I felt like Grant was kind of like fighting for her in that conversation when, they had went off to the side. So I was a little bit surprised to see her leave, but I was not disappointed at all.
Yep.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah.
So that was kind of that. So then that left us with Latia, Dina, Juliana, and our favorite, Zoe. It's sarcastic. So that takes us into last night's episode, which also wasn't anything crazy, like not a whole lot to discuss, but a little bit. So they start with the hometown dates. This is the week of hometowns, and they start with Juliana. And so they go to a pizzeria, and they make these little cute heart-shaped pizzas, very cliche, but cute. And they got to chit-chat. Anything from there that you picked up on?
I thought one thing that was interesting, and it could be, they chose this pizza guy because he's a close family friend or something, but she clearly knew the pizza guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just speaks to, sort of like the hometown. She has a big family.
Yeah.
They know, everybody in the town kind of knows everybody.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of fun. It told you a little bit about, her family and, who they are in the community to some degree. Which, I felt like the other dates you didn't see anything like that really. It was more just, they met their families or their friends, but there was no, sort of, broader, kind of look at the community.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of a nice little detail.
I definitely agree with that. Okay, so then they go to a cannoli shop. They talk more. She listed like 1,000 people that he was going to meet. Normally when they go to the hometown dates, they'll meet the mom and dad and maybe the siblings or the siblings and their spouses. But she was like, you're going to meet my 87th cousin. You're going to meet the guy that used to, cut my hair and walk my dog when I was a kid. Like, she listed all these people, but what I loved was that she was so confident and so excited. She knew all these people would show up for her. She knew that they would come for her, and I thought that was really great. So Grant did say to the camera that he was, I think it was to the camera, it could have been to Juliana, but he was okay with her parents grilling him because he has real, true feelings for her, so he can stand on that. And I like that. I feel like we're finally starting to see some depth from Grant, which is, important, especially at this stage in the game when we only have 4 girls left. Or
right.
It's not a game, but it kind of has felt like a game this season, in my opinion. So, yeah. Any further thoughts on that before we go to her actual parents' house?
I thought the whole thing was just pretty cute compared to everybody else's dates. Like, they were making pizzas to take home to the family. They were making cannolis to, bring. I thought that was nice. Doing something kind of in preparation to go see the family.
I agree.
I thought that was a nice touch.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. I like that their entire date was literally wrapped around meeting her family.
Mm-hmm.
So they go and they meet her family, and the first thing of note, and we had mentioned this off camera, was Grant kisses Juliana, and her dad says, "Did you just kiss my daughter?" And from the preview, what did you tell me?
Right. So from the preview, I thought that her dad was going to be a jerk about it. Well, maybe not a jerk, just at least, protective.
Yeah.
And that
sure.
that was like an actual offense to him.
For sure.
But when you actually see it in the show, they frame it a lot differently. Everybody, tells it's a joke. He's just ribbing him. So I think overall they had a pretty good rapport with each other.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody seemed really nice, really happy, very accepting of Grant. I did notice that Juliana was talking to her sister, and she was telling her sister that she is feeling it for Grant. Like, she's really feeling it. This might be her forever guy, all the things. But then when Juliana's sister was interviewed by herself, she said she was just not sure. She was still having concerns. She was worried that he would break Juliana's heart. So she wasn't 100% sold. And I kind of felt like if she wasn't 100% sold, then those parents would not be sold either. But that really wasn't the case. What were your thoughts on his conversation with Juliana's mom?
I didn't take any notes on that, so
okay, so it wasn't really much. Like, he showed her the wolf tattoo, and he mentioned that Juliana had said that her friends, she calls her friends the wolf pack, and so I thought that was kind of cool that he could sort of introduce that. Her mom seemed really nice. She seemed very open and accepting, and I think both of her parents just want her to find love, be loved, and be respected. Mm-hmm. And then after that, we see Grant go, we see him talk to her dad. And I felt like that conversation with her dad went so much smoother than for whatever reason I really anticipated it was going to go. It was easy. Like, her dad definitely was holding him to the fire, but he wasn't rude. Again, he's just concerned about his daughter.
Yep.
But the thing that I picked up in that conversation that really showed me a lot of depth to Grant was when he told her dad that he really respects him. He respects him for keeping his family together, and that he would be honored and love to have a father-in-law like him because he knows that he can learn from him. And I think that went a long way with her dad. And, you know, as a mother myself, if you have a child that's getting married and they're marrying someone who comes from a situation that's maybe not as stable, that would be a really comforting thing to hear. So I think her dad really appreciated that.
Yeah, and I'll say, before we even get to any of the other families, I think Grant definitely had the best connection with Juliana's family over any of the other women.
I completely agree. Like, it seemed like a real deep connection. Like, these people could actually be his family. These could be his in-laws. Yeah, I definitely felt that way. There was something else. Oh, her dad did. So when Juliana talked to her dad said, Grant is ready. I love the guy. And he totally gave Juliana the validation that she needed. So I was really happy to see that, because if you don't remember, Juliana's my favorite. So I'm glad that her family was so supportive and they were on board. And it wasn't just like, sure, if this is what you want, we're okay with it. Like, they did ask him hard questions. They did try to get to know him and, you know, kind of get some insight. So I thought that was really good. I also did like, going back for a second, that Grant told Juliana's dad that he feels like he can see in Juliana the potential that she will help him grow, and he sees where he can help her grow, and that they will be good, equal partners together. So I really like that. And then that was kind of it, and they walked away from the family, and then they had a little private moment together. Any thoughts on their private moment together?
I think this is the first time Grant tells Juliana that he is falling for her. And they both use, I think one thing in The Bachelor that's really interesting is sort of the language they use, right? They never, you know, I mean, given we're 6 weeks in, right? Could I learn to love someone in 6 weeks? You know, and say, I love you?
You could.
But, yeah,
but
sure,
it's not overly common.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So they'll say, I'm falling in love with you, or I'm falling for you, but, you know, rarely do they ever say, I love you. You know? And I think that's just interesting. It's not always that significant, but, I don't know, it's just something interesting that I took note of.
So, okay, so it used to be a thing on The Bachelor that you, like, if you were The Bachelor and I was one of the contestants, I could say, I'm in love with you, or I love you. But it was kind of an unwritten rule that The Bachelor did not say it back. Even if he felt it, he did not say it until the very end at the final rose ceremony. That went wayward years ago, and I feel like we might have mentioned this in, like, the first episode, but that went wayward probably, I don't know how many seasons ago it's been. It's 8, we'll say, I'm taking a guess. And I can see the guy's face, but I can't think of his name, but he told 2 women he loved them. And like, the whole Bachelor Nation was like, you know. But I also noticed, in terms of the language that they use, that he and Juliana were saying, I'm falling for you. Okay, well, I mean, I can fall for, like, a good-looking sandwich, you know? like, say love. At least say, I'm falling in love with you, not I'm falling for you. That was just kind of, like, one little thought that I had about that. But I did like that Grant told Juliana he respected her dad, that he was falling for her, and that he thinks that this could be a fit for him. And he seemed excited. Like, I feel like we're starting to see some real, true excitement from him, so he seemed excited. So I was happy with how their hometown date went. I don't think it could have gone any better, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
Any final thoughts on Juliana's date?
No, that's all I had.
Okay. So next we move on to Zoe's hometown date, which again is also their first one-on-one time that they've ever had alone. Oh, yes.
Oh, actually, I do want to mention something about Juliana real quick. I did take note of, like, exactly where all of them were. So she's from Newton, Massachusetts. I just want to say, nice little town.
Okay.
I like the vibe.
Okay.
Nice little, you know, East Coast town, big Italian family. Good vibe. Good vibe.
All right, yeah.
Contrasted to Zoe, who, well, I mean, also East Coast, but New York City.
Right. And I do feel like you have to be kind of like you have to be a certain kind of person to be able to live in a place like New York City. Like, it's just a game changer, I feel like, for career, all things. Although I think that Grant is the kind of person that could live in a big city like that. I'm not sure where he's from, actually, now that I think of it.
Yeah. Oh, no, he's from New Jersey.
Okay.
He says,
okay.
I'm from New Jersey, so this is familiar to me.
Okay.
So.
Okay, that makes sense. All right. So, yeah, that makes sense. So Zoe's hometown date was interesting because it was truly their first time ever much like a regular one-on-one planned by the producers rather than like a hometown date per se.
Yeah.
Because they had like an activity.
Yeah.
So they go in and they're gonna do.
Okay, real quick, because we didn't cover last week.
Okay, yeah.
Why do you think Zoe did not get a one-on-one last week?
Oh yeah.
Latia got it. And what do you think that says? But Zoe's still here. She didn't get kicked off the show. So what do you think that says?
Okay, I don't know.
And Grant did give a little bit of an answer this week,
A little
but
bit.
I'm still not
much.
entirely sure.
Same. So I don't know. Like, yeah, it is really weird that Zoe never had a one-on-one. Latia got 2 one-on-ones, and Zoe somehow still made it to hometowns, which so did Latia. But I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place. Like, part of me is like, all right, is he just super feeling Latia, and he really just wanted to have more time with her, and it came down to, you know, a couple of girls, and he knew who he would take to the 4 because it didn't matter because he already knows who his top 2 are. Like, is it something like that? I'm not sure. I almost wonder if that last one-on-one was really between, in his mind, was it between Juliana and Latia? Because he seems to have the strongest connection with the 2 of them up to that point, in my opinion. But I don't know. I've never seen that happen before where, I'm not saying it hasn't happened, I just don't recall that ever happening, where someone didn't get a one-on-one and then they got a hometown. Like, hometown is to meet the family. It's just, it's so odd.
Right.
So, okay, so flash forward, so they go, and their activity that they're gonna do is a bridal shoot for a bridal magazine, and this is Zoe's like, this is my time to shine. This is where I shine, I'm a model, and the people in there, they're like fluffing her up. Like the producer, not the producer, but the, whatever the lady is, I can't remember what her title is, but they, you know, they tell her like, you're a model, you should be in your element, so she's really excited. So it's a wedding spread for a magazine, so they wear these different wedding outfits, and I will say, when they walked in and Grant found out what they were doing, his face could not have looked more unamused. He did not look like he was feeling it. He looked uncomfortable, to be honest. And so my thinking is, okay, people read the room, like, don't do anything over the top. So then what do? They go over the top and they're like, here, we brought an engagement ring if you just want to try it on. Why don't you get down on the ground and propose to her? I can tell you, if I were whoever he ends up with, I would be very upset to see that scene. And maybe that's like petty or like just being overly sensitive, but it would bother me to see him on his knee fake proposing to a girl that was competing with me for his heart. I don't know, that would bother me.
Yeah, and I think also from Grant's perspective, you know, obviously he can't be rude and just say, okay, this is weird, but it's pushy. Like,
it is pushy.
And yeah, I don't know, that's kind of weird. And that's kind of been Zoe's thing. Not in the middle of the season so much, but definitely at the beginning.
Yes.
She was very pushy about getting her time with him.
Yes.
You know, kind of stealing him away and stuff, which caused some early drama. She kind of chilled out on that a little bit. But yeah, the whole wedding shoot thing just seems very pushy.
It does.
And I also feel like doing a photo shoot, maybe this is just me, I don't know, maybe you see like couples have a better time doing photo shoots than I think. But I feel like, I don't know, what do you okay. Yeah, I was saying, I feel like it depends on the person. Like I will say, I do think Grant kind of got into it as they were going on, but I do think initially it was kind of like, oh, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he seemed uncomfortable. He didn't really seem like he wanted to do it. He wasn't into it. But my question is, did the producer set this up, or was this Zoe's idea? Like, hey, this is my hometown and this is what I want to do. Because you just made such a valid point. Like, she was pushy at the beginning. She has been pushing her agenda. So was this a way for her to be like, I need you to see me in a gown so you can picture it in your mind? I feel like this could have been her idea.
Or she's trying to promote her modeling career more. Maybe she knows that she's not gonna make it.
That's true.
And she's like, look how good I look.
That's true. Well, I can say, as a professional photographer who does work with models, she wasn't anything over the top.
Okay.
In terms of, you know, posing and hand placement and her hair being disheveled at one point. Like, literally at one point I'm like, oh my gosh, girl, don't you feel your hair? Like, push it off your shoulder or pull more of it forward. But it's just like, it's not sitting well. But that's just like my photographer OCD. I've got issues. So, yeah, he didn't really look like he was super into it at first, but he got into it. You know, he seemed to be more relaxed. She really seemed to be enjoying herself. She was definitely feeling herself. I will say the very last outfit that they got into, like when she was in the full gown and he was in the suit and they were on the rooftop, I felt like they looked like a beautiful couple. Like, aesthetically, they were a beautiful couple. It was very lovely. And I do think that up there we saw that they have a lot of physical chemistry. And I think that that is what brought Zoe to hometowns.
Yep.
I really do. That physical chemistry is very strong between them. they don't really know each other very well.
Mm-hmm.
So they leave there, they move on, and oh wait, so they talk about, they bring up that they talked about before about their non-traditional or non-typical childhoods. So then she tells him who he's going to meet, and she tells him he's going to meet her aunt, her uncle, her sister, and her friend. And he's just like, okay, like, all right, whatever. So then they go and they meet up with everybody at the house, and everyone's very excited to see Zoe, and everyone is on board, and her aunt and uncle seem very, very nice and very supportive. And I guess there's a rift between Zoe and her parents.
Right.
We don't really know what that is or anything. We're not really sure. It's not really our business. But he was able to meet some of her family, and they seemed happy and supportive. And her sister said that she just wants Zoe to be happy, and she also wants to know why Grant didn't give her a one-on-one. But what I found most remarkable is, do you want this pillow for your elbow?
Sure.
Is this one better?
Yeah.
There. What I found most remarkable was when her sister said, the way you guys look at each other, the way he looks at you, and I was like, did I miss something? Because I'm not seeing it. Like, I think just in her sister's mind, she's like, yes, this is going to work. This is a match made in heaven.
Well, I think, and it's funny, all the girls' family or friends said something akin to that.
To that effect, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
so,
For sure. For sure. So, okay, so Zoe talks to her sister. He meets her aunt and uncle. I felt like there wasn't a whole lot of, interesting things to take notes on.
I will say, so her Aunt Charisse, I wrote, Aunt Charisse is right. There are still layers to peel back, is what she
Agreed.
said. And I was like, I agree. I feel like, but especially on Zoe's end, I feel like she's kind of trying to play like a little aloof and mysterious, maybe. And like, she hasn't had like that super real connection. A little bit, but like not that depth of emotional connection that Grant and some of the other women have had.
I agree with that. And I feel like, they've had a really deep conversation about their childhoods, and they have a really strong physical chemistry, but that's not enough. And I don't feel like that's enough for her to be here, but hey, I'm not Grant, I'm not the one picking. So Zoe's sister asked Grant why she didn't get a one-on-one, and he said it was either her holding back or it was me holding back. I'm not sure. But then something happened. Zoe said something, I forget what it was, and he said then he knew it was good to go. She was good to go.
Yep.
I wasn't overly thrilled with that answer. I don't know, like, when you say, like, she was holding back, okay, well, then take her on a one-on-one to get to know her if you're interested in her. If you're the one holding back, like you say, then send her home. Like, it just seemed like a kind of a confusing answer to me that I would have had. That one question would have probably 4 or 5 more questions for him, but the sister seemed satisfied with it, so that was it.
I almost wonder if Zoe was going to go home that week, and then they had that little conversation, and he was kind of like, okay, maybe this isn't the week, and obviously, he kind of had to get rid of Carolina.
Right.
It seems like, so he's like, I'll keep you around for a little longer, see if there's a longer connection. And I think Zoe senses that too. She basically says like, we have a connection, but I think she even acknowledges it's not as deep as with some of the other women, and there's like potential for it, but there might not be time at this point to develop it. Which I think next week. I mean, she didn't get kicked off this week, so I think next week is probably gonna be make or break for her.
Yeah, I do too.
Or 2 weeks from now, or whatever it is.
Hold on, roll back, just in case anyone hasn't. Well, I guess it doesn't matter because we're gonna save at the end anyways. Who's saved and who didn't. I did think it was kind of weird when Grant told, like, when he did that hand thing with Zoe's sister, and he was like, in-law was here.
Yeah.
And I'm like here, and I was like, ooh. Carly looked at me, and she's like, that was awkward.
Yeah, and he said, but this is making it go. This, and I was like, what?
It's not working.
Yeah.
That's not working.
I was like, nobody's convinced here.
No. So that was that. Any other final thoughts on Zoe's date?
That's all I've got on Zoe.
I don't feel like they connected any further on this date than they did prior to this. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so next up is Latia. They're in Star Valley, Wyoming, which is not her hometown, she says, but she says it's a place where her family gets together. I don't know if that means it's like a vacation spot. It's kind of what it sounded like to me. And just about the area before they kind of, go to meet her family. It's very much out in the country. They're riding horses. I thought that
beautiful.
Yeah. I was like, if nothing, she picked this spot just for the scenery.
Seriously, it was so gorgeous, and it felt, even though they're on separate horses, it still felt romantic. It felt like they were in this together, which I'm a person that I think that being in nature with someone and not even speaking can be so, it can connect you so much. I know that sounds so strange. Like, I like to take walks with Lane sometimes around the property, and I do talk, and he probably wants me to shut up, but there's something just about, like, being outside with him that I don't know, it's like, there's like something that connects you.
Yeah.
So I like that. So it seemed romantic to me.
Yeah, I thought it was really nice. And I was thinking there were some shots where the horses, you know, were kind of coming to the camera, and I was imagining the camera people, like, crouched in the tree line.
Right.
I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny.
That is funny.
You know, because you know, you're on a TV set, you're never as isolated as it
Right.
looks.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, it looks amazing, but then, like, you know, that there's like a million cameras, and like, did they have lighting out there? And these are the things that I think a lot of people don't realize how much actual lighting you have to have. And I don't mean light from the sky, but like the like we have a light on us right now, like the artificial lighting that you're taking out. It's a whole production, like it's a big set. Actually, when we were at the Survivor party, I caught something. I don't know if Charity said it or if they said it on the show, but there's like 100 people that work on the set. Unless I misunderstood, but I thought, holy moly! And the point of that was that it was not as isolated as one may think. That there are a million people scattered all over the place doing all these different, you know, jobs for production.
What we're referencing, by the way, we mentioned it, I think, on like the first episode. Our cousin, Charity Nelms, is on this season of Survivor. She made it past the first episode.
Yep.
That's all we've seen so far. But
yep. She's on Team SIVA.
Yep.
So go Team SIVA.
Congratulations, Charity. We'll keep watching.
Yes, we will keep watching, and we will update you next week with her status. So back to Latia. So Latia, they sit down on a bench, and Latia brings up her religion, and he says he's comfortable. He just feels nervous because he doesn't know about, you know, the Mormon religion. He is a man of faith, and so he's open to it. And I think that that's what he meant by like I'm comfortable with it. Like he's open to it, but he said, you know, he doesn't know what that looks like. Does he have to convert, and would he be willing to convert, and would his children have to convert, or would his children have to be raised Mormon? You know, he just had a lot of questions. So he was happy and comfortable, but nervous, which I feel like totally makes sense.
And in sort of response to her, you know, comments about her faith and stuff, Grant, and you know, it's interesting to me because most of the time it's, you know, people have different levels of, you know, sort of religiosity, right? And Grant, you know, he says he believes in God, but you know that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people.
Right, for sure.
And he also says, you know, his mom basically was really strict, and I think the implication here is that she was the religious one. And he said that it caused a lot of problems in his family because his parents weren't equally yoked. And I thought that, you know, that was illuminating as, you know, obviously if you're going to be dating somebody with a different religion, everybody knows that can, you know, be problematic. But I think, you know, from Grant, it's also comes from personal experience.
For sure.
Yeah, which I thought was, you know, just something interesting that he mentioned.
I thought that was, I actually forgot about that, but I thought that was very, like, emotionally, mentally, spiritually intelligent. I'm not really sure what the right word is, because I do think that, you know, sometimes people, they're attracted to somebody, but they're not necessarily on the same page with what their relationship is to religion, or, you know, for me it would be to Christ as my personal savior. Like, your walk needs to be lined up with your potential spouse's walk. If you're not equally yoked, it absolutely creates issues. So I can only imagine what it would be like to date someone in a different religious culture altogether. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So he goes and he meets her family. They all seem very excited, accepting, very nice.
And there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them.
I think, you know, even more than Juliana's family. Because I think they said there were like 30 people, 30-something, and they said there were 40-something here.
It looked like more than 40 people.
Yeah.
It looked like 80 people.
Yeah, it was a lot.
It was. But I love that, though, because I guess something that I'm learning on this particular episode is between Latia's family and Juliana's family, and having all these people around and not being just a smaller, like, I like the smaller, more intimate experience, but I like that Grant had the opportunity to walk in and kind of say, like, this is what my Christmas would look like.
Right.
This is what Thanksgiving would look like. This is who my family would be. I like that. It's not just the immediate family, it's all of them, you know? And you can pick up a lot from people based on their family. Obviously, you shouldn't always pick up everything based on their family, but you know, so I thought that was kind of cool. The little girl, I think it might have been her niece, I can't remember, but the little girl that she picked up, and and she said, "Are you allowed to watch The Bachelor?" And she said, "No." And she said, "Why?" And she said, "Because they kiss." And then
Right.
I was like, "Oh my gosh, that was so weird." How they were like sticking their tongues out, whatever. But she was really cute. You can tell she's important to Latia, and I liked Latia's involvement with her because, like you can see she has that like maternal vibe to her.
Right.
So I think that was really great, which we're actually going to come back to with a comment that she made in a few minutes here. But Grant goes off and he talks to her dad, and oh wait, they played tug of war, which I thought was really fun. That they had like some actual activities scheduled, so that was kind of cute.
Yeah.
But then he goes and he talks to her dad.
Well, and I will say, like, this is a very Mormon thing. Like in Mormon culture, they'll get together. They have games. They have activities. Right? They have the dirty soda stand. I don't know exactly what that means, but like that is a very Mormon thing. Is they have like all these like activities planned, big family get-togethers. You know, family is super important to them. So I think that was just illuminating maybe to Grant, who maybe doesn't know a lot about their like culture,
right?
Because they do have a very different culture. Even though if you don't know a lot about it, you might just think just like any other sort of Americans that come from Judeo-Christian tradition, but they do have a little bit of a different culture, and I think that was just interesting to see.
Yeah, no, for sure. I completely agree with that. I also really like that he had the opportunity to see something that he probably has really not overly been involved with himself. Now, we know that there were issues in his immediate family. That doesn't mean that he doesn't have, more family members and that there weren't get-togethers or anything like that. But just that he could see all these really tight, close, long-time bonds, I think, was very good for him because it helped him to know what kind of environment he's stepping into. And Latia's dad, who is not her dad by birth, he's her stepdad, he's raised her. Her birth father passed away when she was like 3 months old or something like that, like just a new, tiny baby. And Latia even at one point said to her grandpa, like, you accepted him into this family because I believe he was from, they said Fiji?
I thought she was Hawaiian.
No, I don't think that's what they said. Maybe. I don't remember now.
Somewhere in the Pacific.
But yes. So, I think her point was that he looked different than what they were used to. He was, his skin tone was different, and that she was grateful that her grandfather was willing to, accept him into the family, and her grandpa was like, he was the best, and I loved him, and, of course, like, he was a great person, and then the grandpa started talking about the grandma and how much he missed her, and he wished she could be there, and I'm sitting over there like, don't cry, like, that was so sad, but it was very sweet, and I loved the bond that she had with her grandfather. I loved the insight that her grandfather was also able to kind of give her, and the comfort and the direction and the care. So I thought that was really nice. So while they're having that conversation, Grant is having a conversation with her dad, and her dad says it's okay if he's not Mormon because he is a man of faith, and he just wants him to treat Latia with love and respect. So he seemed very open. He didn't really seem like he was grilling Grant, at least that I caught. It just seemed real low-key, easygoing. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought, obviously this reassures Grant quite a lot that, kind of basically says, okay, the religion thing, not going to be an issue. I do wonder, we're not Mormon, so I don't know all the details, and we're not part of her family,
right.
Moreover. So we don't know exactly what they think because, everybody has different ideas about, what their, faith means to them. I wonder, is this him saying, as long as you're religious, we can start there.
Right.
But later on, you got to get married in the temple because that's, that's what makes a Mormon marriage. Or is he really saying, it's okay, as long as you have a faith, you have a relationship with God that guides you, that's enough. I don't know. I don't know.
No, actually, I'm glad that you brought that up because I was wondering that myself too last night. Like, this is a good starting point, or we're okay with this for forever? Because truth be told, like, no matter how much you love someone, at least for me, in the way that I believe, it is God, spouse, children, or God, family, career. People say it two different ways. And I don't think that I could enter into a marriage with someone where I knew I would have to change my religion. I will never change my relationship with Jesus Christ for somebody. As heartbreaking as that would be, it would be more heartbreaking to lose my Savior. For me, at least for me. So I am curious to see, how this does go. Like if they end up being the final two together, I'm curious to see kind of how things play out between the two of them in like 5 years. If they get married and how all that works. So his dad or her dad seemed like totally cool with him. Then he sat down with her mom, and her mom just wants to know you sure you're ready to get married and have a family?
Mm-hmm.
Because both parents noted that was really important. Both parents mentioned she is ready to have a family.
Right. And this is, I didn't even think about this until now, this is another big part of Mormon culture. They get married very early, very young, after knowing somebody for a very short period of time. So, you know, and Latia's, I think they said she's 31, which, you know, to the rest of the world does not sound like that old to get married. But,
yeah.
I mean, you know, you're getting around age. If you're going to get married, it's probably about the time. But
culturally, I think that culture, they do tend to get married younger.
Yeah.
I do think that outside of that culture as a whole in our country, I don't know what the average marrying age is now. I feel like when I got married, it was younger, but I personally feel like it's progressed and it's much older. At least I would say it's probably 32 would be my guess, is like the average. I could be wrong.
Right.
But that's not uncommon, but I think in that culture that is uncommon to wait that long.
Yeah. And so I think, you know, where take, you know, last week, for example, Carolina saying, we've known this guy for 5 weeks. How do we know if we're supposed to marry him? Well, you know, that might not be as much of a problem for Latia growing up in that culture where it's so much more common to get married after a short period of time.
Okay, so then to play off of that, also look at the two women and what they how they invested their time into Grant, and why for Carolina it wouldn't make sense to marry him in a few weeks, but for Latia it totally would make sense. Carolina spent her time on surface level nonsense. She, you know, made out with him, like she went right for the jugular, as we know, without having any kind of real deep connection with him. She just like jumped on him like he was just like whatever. But then she spent so much of her time talking about drama and not getting deep. Meanwhile, Latia, on the other hand, has spent every moment that she can to get to know Grant, to peel back those layers, and to peel back the layers of herself for him to get to know her. And something that was really telling to me on this episode that really just touched my heart was Latia was talking to her mom after, or you know, during this episode, and she said, it's really going to hurt my feelings if he sleeps with other women. And I think for Latia, this could actually 100% be a deal breaker. But she said, it's really going to hurt my feelings. And she said, Mom, I love him, and I've been scared to say it. She said, but the moment I knew I loved him was when he talked about sitting in his bedroom eating alone. And she said, and I knew right then, she said, it crushed me so much, and I knew right then that I wanted to give him a family. I wanted him to have a family that would love him, and I wanted to give him that because I've been so blessed with that, and I want to show him what that is. And that's when I knew I loved him, and I was like, because she's taken the time to invest, to really get to know him, you know, to figure out what his needs are, where he's coming from. She's not just been looking at him like, oh, he's the bachelor, or he's some good-looking guy. Like, Latia is on a mission. So if she does not marry Grant, I still think she will be married pretty rapidly in the next year or two to somebody, because she's starting a relationship and immediately she's going right in and she's digging to find out who they are. And is this someone that could potentially be the right one for her? So I loved that she said that.
Yeah, I thought that was really sweet. And yeah, and again, she said she thinks she loves him, but when they talk to each other, they say, I'm falling in love with you. And they both say that to each other.
Right.
But yeah, again, it's an interesting use of that language, a little bit different between I love you or I'm in love with you, I'm falling in love with you.
For sure. Falling in love is just that step right before in my, that's how I've always viewed it. Like, I'm not there yet, but, and it's weird because also, you can love someone as a friend or another human being.
Right.
It's weird how there's like different kinds of love, you know? Like, I think that they have a big love for each other, but they're, but then they don't love each other, but they do. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
But when she told him that, when she confessed that at the very end of their date, you could see he was so elated, so happy, relieved. You can tell Grant really is feeling all the things for her. And I'm trying to draw some like comparisons between, some pros and cons between Latia and Juliana, because I think that he really loves both of these women, but sees a very different life with both of these women. And I think he's gotten a little bit deeper with Latia than he has with Juliana.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think that could become an issue because he's not going to want to walk away from Juliana until he knows for sure that he's discovered everything that he needs to know about her. My prediction is it comes to the two of them in the end.
I agree 100%. Which one, I really don't know.
Right.
It will, but I think you're 100% right, those two.
Any final thoughts on Latia's date?
No, that's all I have.
Okay. So So moving on to Dina's date, honestly, this one was pretty short.
Yeah.
He said at the beginning, I could see myself falling in love with Dina, but I'm not there yet. And I just kind of feel like if at hometowns, like, you're not falling in love yet, they should not be at hometowns.
Yep.
But again, this also goes back to the thing with Zoe. I don't think it mattered who the other two women that he brought were to hometowns because I think his heart is set on Juliana and Latia.
Mm-hmm.
So
they're in Chicago. They're at like a Halloween.
A pumpkin patch.
Oh, a pumpkin
and
patch.
he said he'd never been to a pumpkin patch before. Did you hear him say that?
No, I didn't catch
Yeah.
that.
He said he'd never been to a pumpkin patch, and so that was really cool. That pumpkin patch was unlike anything I've ever been to before.
Right.
That was like, this is like an amusement park
Yeah.
and a pumpkin patch, like all rolled up into one. It was pretty neat. But unfortunately, you can see Dina has some concern and worry because she's going to have to break the news to Grant before they get to the pumpkin patch. This is a little earlier on.
Right.
She has to break the news to him that he's not going to be meeting her family. That her family collectively decided that they were out. They were not willing to meet him under this circumstance.
And she's not 100% clear on why, but from my understanding, she said they're part of the church. Her father's a pastor, a deacon, and that basically they didn't want to kind of put themselves out there. I want to say like they don't want to be put on TV, especially if they don't end up getting married. That's like is because that's embarrassing. I guess that's kind of what I got from that. Is that what you got?
Yeah, I mean that was kind of my takeaway. Is like, they just aren't really subscribing. They're really not into it. They're not feeling the experience of it. Like I didn't take it as like they supported the experience. That they support her, but not that. Now I will say I think she's got 10 or 11 siblings.
Right.
As she said at one point, if I didn't have one stinking sibling show up for me, I would be devastated.
Yeah.
Like Dina's not necessarily, but I don't dislike Dina. She's not been one of my like top contenders at all. But my heart broke for her last night. You have 2 parents and 11 siblings, or maybe there's 11 kids total, whatever it is. You got like 12ish people, and one of them could have shown up, and not a single one did. But I love that her girlfriends were there.
Yep.
They showed up for her. He had an opportunity to talk to them, and I told Carly I felt like maybe this was a blessing in disguise because he would get to see her be comfortable in a different way and just be like fun. Like this is who I'd be with out on a Saturday night, just regular, real. And I do feel like we kind of saw her walls drop a little bit last night.
Mm-hmm.
Like she was comfortable because she was with her people. Not that it wouldn't have happened with her family because it would have, but I still think that it worked out really, really well. Her friends say that she has a big heart, or one of her friends said, like, she's got a big heart, and he was like, that's what I want to see. Like, I need to know more of that side of her. And I was like, that's not that. I mean, he wasn't wrong for saying that comment, but I just kind of feel like that gives a lot to show us where Grant's head is at.
Yeah. And I kind of knew, when her family didn't show up, obviously that kind of put a dent on, like, the mood of things also. I could just kind of tell, I knew she was done at that point.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and honestly, they just don't seem like they have a really good connection.
Yeah.
I don't know, there doesn't seem to be a depth. There doesn't seem to be a physical connection that they can't pull themselves away from, and there doesn't seem to be, like a really deep connection between like them as intellectuals, between their spirits, I guess. So, I don't know. Dina said at the end of that day that she's falling for him and she can see an end with him. But I also feel like maybe Dina got caught up in the emotions of all of her girlfriends who were there and like, oh, he's so good looking and he seems like such a nice guy, and so then she just kind of got like swept up and carried away in that. Did you have a different thought on that, or what were your thoughts?
No, I'm 100% on the same page. I thought the same thing.
So her friends did say that her family is kind of like closed off and very private, but once you're in, and they're wonderful people. So I did feel like, shout out to the girl that said that. I think that was really important for, it doesn't matter what the audience thinks, but I think that was important that Dina will be able to go back and watch this and say, thank you, somebody, for redeeming my family. Because by no one from her family showing up, her family did not make themselves look good. Excuse me. They did not make themselves look supportive at all. So her friends saying, they're just very private, but if they love you and they take you in, you're never leaving. Like, you're theirs, they love you, that's it. So I think that was very redeeming, and I think that was very gracious for that girl to say that, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you have any other thoughts about Dina's date?
That's all I really had. Yeah, there wasn't a ton going on there, I didn't think.
I completely agree.
So next it cuts to Grant is talking to Joey. Is it?
Yes, the best bachelor of all time, Joey. We love Joey. Joey was a great bachelor.
Okay, so was he last season?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he was the last bachelor. That's right. burpee. He was the Bachelor last season, and he's just a phenomenal human being. He's very sensitive, really great. We just really, really liked him a lot. Carly and I both did. So Joey's giving Grant some like really great advice. He's telling him, no matter what, trust your gut. Follow your heart, trust your gut. And I think that Grant walked away from that conversation having some things to think about. Was there anything of note with that conversation for you?
Not a lot. Just he said, how do you break someone's heart that you care about?
Right.
That's what Grant said. And, so, obviously, I think at this point, he cares about all these women to some degree. They're not just whatever anymore.
Right.
Even if the connection isn't as strong as with some of the others. So
Agreed.
I thought that was kind of just like, I don't know, it was kind of, it's sad to know that you have to do that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I don't know. I was thinking last night as I was watching him kiss Latia, I was thinking to myself, as wonderful of a time as this must be for him, there's got to be some level of torture knowing that he and Juliana were just talking about falling in love with each other. And that he really is feeling that way. And how can your heart as a human not feel guilt for feeling that way about 2 people or 3 people or 4 people? I don't think you can feel that way about 4 people. But you know what I mean? Like, he's got such a strong connection with at least a handful of people. So I definitely understand where he was coming from on that.
Yeah.
So then we move on to the rose ceremony. And there was no real big surprise there for me. The first person that was called to get a rose was Latia. And I do kind of wonder if this plays to the order of his feelings.
I think so.
I think it does too. I think with Latia, he sees it. I think with Latia, he knows he could have a family in a year and a half.
Right.
Like, they can be married in 6 months and they can have a baby, another 9 months after that. And I think that is ultimately what he's craving because it's what he feels like he's missing. So Latia gets the first rose. Then you have Juliana next.
Yep.
She gets the next rose. She doesn't look surprised. I think she was a little bit nervous. Oh, wait. Let's flash back for a second. Actually, I want to talk about when the girls were all together.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so flashback for a second. The girls all get together before the rose ceremony and they talk about, their hometown dates, and Latia says, so, let's, who wants to talk about their hometown dates? When she said that, it made me wonder if she was not doubting her relationship with Grant, but if she's wondering if anyone else is on the same level, if anyone else had a really great experience.
Right.
So Latia talks about hers, and Zoe talks about hers, and Juliana talked about hers, and then we get to Dina. Dina says, he didn't meet my family. And oh my gosh, I was crushed, because I think Dina knew in that moment she was going home. But I also wondered this. So now we know that Latia has a rose, Juliana has a rose, and the next rose is going to go to either Dina or Zoe. And I said, I think it's going to go to Zoe, but because of the family dynamic that Grant comes from, and because he's talked about that so much and how important having a stable family is to him, I think that it is possible he could eliminate Zoe, because Zoe has issues with her parents. She does not have a strong family dynamic, it doesn't sound like. Dina does have a strong family dynamic. They just weren't into the Bachelor idea of her meeting someone. They weren't into opening up their lives to the publicity and the fame.
Well, I don't know 100% if that's there. I can't give you a direct quote. There was something from a former episode that she said that made me think she didn't have a super great relationship with her family. And it might have been something where she's talking about, she's one of 11 kids or whatever it was, and so she kind of.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
I don't remember exactly what it was, but there was something in there.
Something about how she is closed up and walled off because she didn't take every problem that she had to her parents because they had 11 other kids to deal with.
Right.
So maybe her connection with them is not quite as strong, but at least it doesn't seem like it's strained. So I thought that might keep her over Zoe. So he announces the final rose, and he looks at Zoe, and then he looks at Dina, and then he calls
Zoe.
So Zoe gets the last rose, which again, between her and Dina, I don't think it matters because the connection with either of them is not even close to the connection that he has with Latia and Juliana.
Right.
But I wasn't sure how that would go. I felt like the way that Dina handled it was so classy. He was classy about it. It was a very nice party. It was very, very nice. And I like that she talked in the car about, how she said my prayer today was, if he is not for me and I am not for him, don't let me get a rose. Like, don't let this be the thing. I don't want to go another week, get more invested, and then be heartbroken. Yeah.
I thought, she was very gracious, very practical about it. Honestly, I thought maybe she seemed a little relieved.
I didn't pick up relieved. but maybe relieved in the sense that like, okay, this isn't him, I'm moving on. I did feel like what she said to him though about like, I feel like I've learned things from you about myself that I didn't think I could learn in such a short amount of time. That seemed very sincere, so I think that she felt okay leaving. Like, I wanted it to work out with us, but it's okay, I'm okay that it didn't. I'm moving on with a new sense of self.
Right.
So I really liked that a lot. So now, next week, we have the Women Tell All, which once in a while is just boring, and Carly and I kind of like fast forward through a lot. But if there's drama in the season, then sometimes they'll call each other out on it. And I think that there will be some calling each other out next week.
Oh, yeah.
But I have a feeling there's going to be a lot that's directed at Carolina, and I also have a feeling that Carolina will own it and accept responsibility. I could be wrong, but I think she will. She's like in public relations. I think she knows better than to continue to allow herself to look like an absolute bitch. I just do. So we'll see what happens. And then the week after that, we get to the, is it the grand finale? The season finale?
Well, it's the
because it's the fantasy suites.
right.
And then I can never remember if fantasy suites are the same week as.
Well, I thought it usually comes down to the last two, right?
Yeah. So the week after that, then he'll have the fantasy suite date with all three women. What they choose to do in the fantasy suite is up to them. It's private. It's off camera. And then after that, he will eliminate one more, and then it will come down to the final two.
Okay.
So I am excited to see where this goes. My prediction is Zoe's out next.
Well, okay, so
But we'll see.
you know, what if Zoe comes in last minute, fantasy suites? She could be a bit of a seductress. Who knows?
That's what I for sure see happening.
Yeah.
I think she's at least going to make that attempt.
Yeah.
I think she's going to make that attempt to be every fantasy, every dream he's ever had in every single way. Like, not, and I don't even mean just in the fantasy suite private time, but like, I think she will spend her entire day trying to be the woman she thinks he's looking for, rather than just being herself.
Yeah.
And I hope that she doesn't do that, because that is a real disservice to her, and it is a real disservice to Grant.
For sure.
You know, they could have a really important conversation where they realize that they have a very fundamental disagreement on something, and then they both know this would never work. But if you're playing into what you think he wants, then that's going to mess all of that up for
Right.
sure.
And you know, obviously, like, I don't know. I'm very curious to see what happens there, because it could be very dramatic. Because Latia basically said, if he sleeps with another woman, then that's really gonna hurt my feelings. And she said she's not going to, right? So like, who knows? And I really don't know what Juliana, what'll happen there.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, there have been incidents in the past where people have said like, I, did not expect that he would sleep with anyone else after he slept with me, because I thought our connection was so strong, and I would not have slept with him had I known he was sleeping with one or two other people. And I do have to say, like, maybe this is just from my own value system, but I don't personally think that you need to sleep with anyone in the fantasy suite. This is my opinion. But if you're going to sleep with someone, I don't think that this is like an outfit that you try on for size. I think that if you're pretty sure, like, that it's this one particular person, and you both are in that moment and you make that mutual decision together, then go for it. But if you're that far in with someone, I just don't understand how you go sleep with someone else the next day and then someone else the third day. That to me is just so incredibly off-putting, but you do see it happen often. We've also seen before though where we've gotten fantasy suites and the Bachelor or the Bachelorette will send somebody home before they even ever get into the fantasy suite, because they just want to cut that off right there, so that's not even on the table anymore. You just never know what's going to happen. It could be the most modest, wholesome, wonderful thing, or it could just be pure debauchery. Like, it's The Bachelor after all. So that's it. Any final thoughts on this particular episode?
Nope, that's about all I have.
Neither do I. I have no thoughts. I think that was, pretty low key, but I guess there was still plenty to cover.
Yeah.
But I'm very much looking forward to the Women Tell All next week. I can't wait to see what happens, and we'll come back next Tuesday with an update on that. So
Is Juliana still your favorite?
Now that you ask, I love Juliana. I just think she's so sweet and wonderful and bubbly. But do I think that Latia is going to give Grant the whole world that he never even knew he wanted? He wanted, but he didn't even know how amazing it could be. I think Latia is the one for him.
Yeah,
I
think so too.
love Juliana. I just absolutely adore her. And if she is not picked, I hope she becomes the next Bachelorette. I really do. I really, really like her a lot. But I really like Latia a lot. And Latia just seems so solid. And I think that that's what Grant needs. He needs that, solidity in his life. That, conform. Well, that's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. So, all right. So those are our thoughts for last night's episode. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure that you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Podcasts. And once in a while I do put up a podcast on Fridays, although I've been lacking the last couple of weeks because life's been crazy. But make sure you come, you check us out, make sure that you like it on Facebook. And until we see you next week, I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Nash.
And we are signing out.